Hello, everybody. Welcome. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday morning if you're on the West Coast, or Thursday afternoon. My name is Jessica Chen, and welcome to our event here today. We have a really special event planned for you. But before we get started, I want to welcome everybody. I'm seeing all the cities that people are dialing in from, and we have people from all over the country right now, actually around the world as well. So we have people from Texas, Louisiana, New York, Seattle, London. So again, welcome and thank you everybody for taking the time to join us today. Again, we have a very special event today, and this is all part of LinkedIn Create Week. And it's for those who really want to learn how to better utilize the LinkedIn platform, but specifically today's talk. And I'm going to invite my guest up in just a few moments. It's going to be all about how to utilize video on this platform. So my guest is Dana Brownlee, and she is a fantastic person to be talking to when it comes to video. Now, this event is going to be about 45 minutes or so. So if anybody has any questions as Dana and I are chatting, please throw it in the chat function, whether that's to your right, your left, the bottom, however it is that you're viewing. Please throw it in, because we want this event to be for you to get the most value out of it. And any questions really related to video content, or maybe just content in general on this platform, we want to be able to answer it. So without further ado, I want to invite my guest up to our event. Hi, Dana. How are you?
Hey, I'm so glad to be here. Great to see you, Jessica.
Yes, it's really good to see you. So Dana, first of all, we're so happy that you are here, and you're definitely a great person to talk to when it comes to video. But let me introduce you. You are the president of Professionalism Matters. You're a speaker. You're a senior contributor at Forbes. The list goes on and on and on and on. And I really think you're a great person to talk to about this, because you have just so much experience when it comes to, yes, how do you present yourself? What is it that you talk about? Of course, also video. But actually, I forgot to introduce myself. So my name is Jessica, for those who don't know who I am. And I'm the founder and CEO of Soulcast Media. And for us, we are a communications agency. So we work with folks and corporate companies on how they can be better communicators. But prior to Soulcast Media, I was actually a former TV news reporter. So speaking on video, learning how to present yourself and carry yourself on video is something that I actually had to learn myself. And fortunately, a lot of the things that I learned in my first career translates very well to kind of the world we live in today, plus, of course, creating video content. But Dana, is there anything that I missed in terms of the work that you do?
Well, also just wanted to highlight that we're both LinkedIn Learning instructors. And so we've gone through that process of creating video for LinkedIn Learning, and that's been a great experience.
It has. And I think, you're right. We're both LinkedIn Learning instructors. And I think that has given us a lot of experience of, just how do you create video content that's engaging? Because I think that's one of the challenges a lot of people face, and also fear, right, when it comes to creating video. So as everybody can see down here, the topic today is really about the impact of video. And Dana and I actually, prior to this, we were chatting prior to this call, and we were talking about, okay, what are some of the tips we can share with people? And we really do have a lot of tips, but just to kind of start, Dana, what have you seen work for you when it comes to utilizing video specifically on LinkedIn, and any kind of high level tips you want to start out with really quickly for those who are watching right now?
Yeah, sure. I think that, we're in an era of, we're all dominated by technology and social media, and there's so much stuff out there. And it can be really easy to get intimidated by that, to feel like, oh my God, I'm not doing that. Are you doing that? In Clubhouse and this and that. And so I think the first thing is to just like take a breath, okay? And realize there's lots of platforms out there. There are lots of apps out there. But at the end of the day, you need to figure out what is going to work best for you and your goals and your business model. So don't get overly intimidated or caught up in what a million other people are doing. Look at the opportunities and figure out what's going to work authentically for you. And that's what I've done. And in fact, I was chatting with Jessica right before. I was like, I'm not an expert. I don't consider myself an expert. And as I was reflecting back on it, I've probably used video 4 different ways. Okay. So first, I've used the regular webcam, like we've all probably done. You shoot a video, you may or may not edit it, and then you throw it somewhere. Secondly, I've done, believe it or not, back in the day, it sounds crazy now that we're in a pandemic. Years ago, because I'm a speaker, I used to bring a videographer with me to a lot of speaking events because I needed video of me. It wasn't just me, like, you're looking at me right now. I need me on that big stage, me with 1,000 people. I needed all of that background, that environment. So I would bring a videographer oftentimes, and then we would splice that into clips later, and then I would use that video. Thirdly, I would use animated whiteboard videos. I started creating these animated whiteboard videos. If you're not familiar with that term, we've all seen them. Sometimes they're commercials done this way. It's like you're talking, I would record the voiceover and the script, but then someone's drawing. Like it might look cartoonish, but they can be done very professionally. And then fourth would be what we're doing now. It's streaming live, and then that becomes a video product. So of those 4, I've really leaned into number 3 and number 4 much more so. And that's worked really, really well for me. So my first tip would obviously be figure out what is really going to work best for you.
I think a lot of people get intimidated when they think, oh, I have to shoot and create video content. Where do I start? I don't know what to talk about. I feel awkward in front of the camera. Well, I will say one of the, I guess, quote unquote, silver linings with all of us perhaps working remotely or hybrid is I think a lot of us have gotten slightly a little bit more used to communicating on video, which is kind of, it takes that one big step, whether or not we realized it or not, that we've already through the last year and a half cultivated the skill of communicating on video. So if you have that initial block, just think, well, I'm already jumping on these Zoom or Microsoft Team calls, so I am kind of familiar with communicating on video, so that's good.
Right.
But I think in terms of, let's just talk about kind of getting over the fear of creating video. The beauty of creating video is that if you don't like it, you don't have to use it.
Yeah, and you can edit. We love edit.
Yes. And that's the great thing about it, like versus something like this, so right now we're broadcasting live that's going directly onto LinkedIn. And the fact that it's live, it does require, for example, you and me to kind of be a little bit more flexible and agile because whatever we say is directly broadcasted. But if it's kind of like your first time thinking about video, of course, don't jump to something like this. Start with the small video content. So some of the tips that I would share when it comes to creating video is, well, number one, I really do think it's a very powerful form of content, especially if you are in a position of you're trying to increase your thought leadership in your industry, if you're trying to just kind of get your ideas out to a broader audience that you've never worked with before. And the great thing about video that's different from just typing or just a picture is that people actually really feel like they get to know you because they get to what? See your expression, see your mannerisms, hear your voice. And that's really the strongest form of connection. So number one, I've always been an advocate for video. Of course, I'm a little biased because of my background in TV, but I think for any professional, especially in this modern day, I think video is really good. But for some of the things that worked for me, shorter, the better, right? And it doesn't even have to be fancy video content. I've been creating video content on LinkedIn for the last 2.5 years. So I've practiced a lot with this kind of content, more formal type of content, long form. And I've always felt that the more casual it is, people like that a little bit more. I don't know. What do you think, Dana?
I absolutely think that. In fact, I titled my LinkedIn Live series, Real Talk About Race, Discussing the Undiscussables. And my entire focus is I don't want it to be that canned presentation where I'm interviewing, this PhD on this topic and it's going to be dry and boring. And that's 30 minutes of your life you're never going to get back. I wanted it. In fact, when I started my series, I intentionally said, I am interviewing no experts. I'm not talking to any experts. You know who I interviewed? I interviewed my parents. I interviewed my husband. I interviewed my friends. I wanted the audience to see real life conversations. That's what we all want to see anyway. That's why reality TV blew up, because that's what people really want to see. So I would say if the dog is barking, don't worry about it. I just pick up the dog and I say, hey, here's my dog. Because I think it makes it, and it is, it's you're being authentic. And I think that people really can sense that. So I would say absolutely lean into that authenticity, even if some of that authenticity means that it's not heavily produced. Because I promise you, Jessica, I mean, she's got it all together. You know, you show up for my stuff, it's not going to look nearly as produced. But I mean, you know, I'm doing the best I can. That's not really me. I'm heavily into the subject matter.
Yep.
But I might forget to put my banner up. Like every time I do a session, I'm not kidding you. Afterwards, I was like, oh, shoot, I forgot to go to the comments. Or that was just the very first one. Literally, I was almost done with it before I clicked on the comments. But every single one, I forget something from a production perspective. And I just make a note, but I don't beat myself up about it. And I'm like, well, let's try to not forget that one next time. But I feel like people really kind of appreciate that, because they feel that I'm really leaning into the topic and I'm just being myself.
I completely agree. I actually want to say, for those who just jumped on right now, we have over 50 people who are on this. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to join me and Dana on today's topic, which is about the impact of video. Again, welcome. This is for you. So in terms of questions or comments, Dana and I want to make sure that we're answering any questions that you have. So if you have any questions for us, throw it in the chat, and we want to make sure that we get to it. So again, this is going to be about about 40 minutes or so, this chat. So some of the things that you were saying, you mentioned authenticity. Now, I know a lot of people, when they think about, okay, well, if I'm going to create content and I'm trying to be authentic, will it seem, unprofessional, or, will it take away from that part of me? And I always say, I mean, in the end, use this the way you want to use it. Right. And again, because we're talking specifically about LinkedIn, and the beauty of LinkedIn is because it's a professional platform, talk about your industry, talk about your work, talk about things that you know, right? And you don't necessarily have to be right? That's the great thing about video content and content in general. It's your opinion. People are going to gravitate towards it or not. But the great thing about it is the people who gravitate towards you when you're talking on video is that they'll start to get to know you. They will want to kind of continuously hear you. They'll check in on your LinkedIn page. So again, I think video, what's more powerful than the typical picture that you may post, the text, which of course has its own value. I do all of it. But again, I think video is great because people get to know you. They can get to hear your voice.
Yeah. And I think it's important. I know there are a couple of questions there, so maybe you want to check on those. But before you get to that, I just wanted to also add that authenticity does not mean lack of preparation. Because even though I know, Jessica, you agree with me, you love to have that conversational format, and that's absolutely what I wanted for my live sessions, is that very conversational, but I absolutely prepare. I mean, I take it very, very seriously. People allocating 30, 40, 50 minutes of their time to spend with me. So I'm absolutely doing my research. I have, my whole plan, not my script, not exactly what I'm going to say, but I've done my research. I'm really, really taking it seriously. To me, it's kind of like the Saturday Night Live, approach. It's like, it looks like they just kind of showed up and, they're all laughing and, being funny, but they relentlessly prepare. So I believe in relentless preparation. And then you go with the flow and you let them see your authentic self.
I agree. So so in this context, we're talking about the live streaming, but for those who are just posting kind of the more recorded video content, for example, if you're just recording something on your phone, right? I think that just in itself, that is worth preparing for too. So for me, the way I kind of think about when I create my video content is, so it's two ways. Sometimes I'll create a list of topics that I know related to my industry of communications that I'm like, oh, I know a lot of people have been asking about public speaking. I know a lot of people have been asking about how to build speaking confidence. So I'll write those down as topics that I want to shoot a video on. And then I'll get on and I'll actually shoot maybe like 5 or 6 at a time. Casual. I'm talking about casual videos where I'm just talking like this, because I have found people really like that more informal. But sometimes I will be working, right? And I'll just have a spark where I'm like, I really want to create a video right now about this one topic I'm writing about. And I will, again, just pull up my video or my phone and shoot a video. And the beauty of it is then it just kind of lives in your photo album on your phone. But then when you have time, then you just go and edit. And then you just, for me, I use a scheduling system. And then I can just schedule it out for it to be posted. And again, but in terms of the creation aspect, I have found the more casual it is, the more conversational it is. Think about you just having a conversation with your friend. That it really translates. So when you're shooting a video, think about like you're just telling your friend about, these are my favorite public speaking tips. Those types of kind of way of communicating, I think resonates really well on video. So
I absolutely agree. And I'll also add that think about what your goal is, like what the real purpose is. So I think that different videos are effective for different goals. So for me, if I'm a speaker or a trainer, then I want potential clients to be able to see me in action, or I want to be able to create a video that shows like a sample. If you were to hire me, this is what you would get, or these are my views on a particular topic. So what I've also done is I've created videos, whether it's, you're doing a Zoom with slides and maybe you're just recording that could be like a little sample. Or I mentioned earlier, I did animated whiteboard videos, and those for me were awesome. Like I didn't have to do any makeup. I didn't have to worry about the lighting. Because back in the day, like I mentioned, I would bring a videographer, with me to speaking events. And then we come back and we go through the video and I'd be like, the room, they were shooting this side of the room when I wanted them shooting this side of the room, or the lighting was bad, or there weren't enough people in the seats, or they didn't capture the laughter on this side, or the audio was bad. But with the animated whiteboard videos, I can control everything. And so for those, I really focus on giving the client a snippet of what they would get through an event with me, or I give them real content. It's like maybe it's 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes, but they get 8 minutes of really good content on a topic that they really care about. And then I can repurpose that video in proposals, responding to clients. I can post it on social media. I can put it in my newsletters. But once I've got that great whiteboard video, it's really, really been valuable for me.
That whiteboard idea is actually something I had not thought about before we actually started talking, Dana. And I was like, that's a great use of video without having to show your face if that's not something that you're comfortable with. And it can get you into the flow of, okay, this is how you create video content, but you just don't have to see me, at least initially. And it's great because you can write a script. So you already kind of know what you want to say. So
because think about it. Who watches themselves during any sort of performance and thinks, oh, that was perfect. There's nothing I would have changed. I mean, that's just not the way it works. Yeah. And I'm not saying it replaces it. I think it's a both and, not an either or. But for me, it was a nice compliment. And I also think it looked really professional. I think it was another level of professionalism. So for me, instead of me just having a blurb about a particular presentation or a topic area, I would include a hyperlink and say, here, for more on not just my style, my speaking style, but also my views on this particular topic, you can take a look. Or to learn more about this particular topic, you can take a look at this whiteboard video.
I love it. I love that we're also talking about creating video content where it's not you. So I think that's great. Okay, let's pull up some questions. We've actually got a number of questions come up. So the first question I want to pull up is just this kind of really quick question. What is the optimal video length when it comes to like a communications? But let's talk about like video content. What have you seen work really well for you, Dana, video length wise?
Yeah, I think it's it depends. I don't think because it depends on what your goal is. I think that there's sometimes, like you mentioned, where you're just trying to check in and maybe you want to generate some social media interest. For that, I would say it's short. But if I'm a corporate trainer and I'm creating more of an instructional video, I don't want it to be salesy, because I don't believe in salesy. I believe in, if you watch this video, you're going to learn how to deal with difficult personalities in your meetings, or you're going to learn how to manage up with a difficult boss, or you're going to learn project management techniques. So for those are much more content rich. Yep. Those for me tend to be longer. So they might be 6, 7, 8 minutes. And certainly you could record, if you did a 30-minute, PowerPoint presentation on Zoom, I mean, that might be even longer. So I think the key is customizing the length to your particular audience and the goal that you have in mind.
Yeah. For me, the way I would answer that question is, there is no standard, right? I think a lot of it is, how engaging is your content, and how is it that you're talking about your content, right? You can give a 20-minute video content posted, but if it's just kind of like very bland, of course, no one's going to listen. But if it's 20 minutes of high energy, engaging, value driven, people will watch the whole 20 minutes, right? But I have found, to keep my life simple when I create video content, I just try to kind of keep it short, because first of all, for editing, like post-production purposes, it's just easier, because for me, I like to put captions on it. So it's less words for me to write out as well if it's shorter, but it's also easier to edit. And I think because we're talking about social media, LinkedIn is still a social media platform. I think people generally appreciate videos that, are shorter, but again, it's not wrong to have a longer video. So I have found my sweet spot to be between like 3 to 4 minutes long, and that's worked really well for me. So
awesome.
Okay, the next question I want to pull up is from Desiree. Outside of going live, how do you recommend we use video? I mean, we've talked about a few things, Dana. You had your whiteboard, you had your long form content. I talked about the videos where I literally just record it on my phone and just save it on my phone and then get back eventually to editing it. What other stuff do you have, Dana, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a lot. Like I said, also just recording a presentation that you're already doing, or a presentation with a group. And let's say, this goes back to the time question, you might do the presentation for 30 minutes, but you may not want to post the entire 30 minutes. Think about editing that video into separate clips, and then giving each clip a different name. So that one event could produce many different clips of video. But I would say, yeah, those are a lot of the different ways that you might go about using it.
I agree. So for example, right now, Dana and I are on this LinkedIn Live, and we're going to be chatting for about 40 minutes. But sometimes, like, for example, I have a small team who will actually chop up this. So in the end, what they see is maybe like a 2-minute snippet of what Dana and I talked about. And if they're interested enough, I would point them to, if you want to watch the full video, go to LinkedIn or go to YouTube or wherever else it's posted. But it's kind of like a little teaser, right? Of if you want to know more. But I think ultimately, if people are going to walk away with any kind of golden nugget, whatever video content you post, just really focus on, what are people going to learn out of this 2-minute video, 3-minute video, 4-minute video, or however long it is? Because if it's clear, concise, and value driven, people love that. So
absolutely,
always just kind of keep that in mind. Let's see. Okay, and Desiree, of course, thank you for your other question. What editing tools do you love? What do you have anything that you recommend, Dana?
Sometimes I just, if it's, super simple, I mean, obviously you could do that maybe, on your phone or what's preloaded on your laptop. I use, Movavi for my editing. Like, I've done some family home movies. That's probably where I've done the most editing, obviously, ironically. But I've used that for my editing. But I don't do a ton of editing either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this actually is a good question, because somebody else asked this question when it comes to video editing. So I've used Final Cut Pro. It's a little bit more advanced, and I think for simple video basic editing, you don't need to get that fancy. But there's actually some apps that you can download on your phone that you can literally edit on your phone itself. I'm trying to actually find it right now so I can tell you guys the name. Filmmaker Pro. That's actually one that I've used before. But I do find that it is generally easier to edit video on your laptop. And when we're talking about editing video, I mean, we're keep it simple too, which is why we say shorter the better. So really, all you want to do is just be able to just trim. right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just trimming, I mean, you can do that on your phone or whatever is preloaded on your laptop. But if you want to add music and captions and things like that, like I like the Movavi suite. I've used them. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah. And I'd say, like, if you're just starting out, don't get fancy. I mean, don't even put captions, don't put music, don't put, graphics
You don't
and animation.
have to.
Yeah, don't overwhelm yourself, especially if this is something that you've been thinking about doing. I would say just start, right? Whatever topic resonates with you because it's related to your industry, just shoot a quick video of you talking about it. And I have to, again, if you're going to shoot video, and Dana, you might actually resonate with this, but it's just make sure that when you're speaking, do it with some energy, because that really is so important when you're doing video content.
Yeah, it's not just the content, it's the delivery. And really, I mean, think about our attention span. I mean, if you click that little triangle and somebody seems like they're not thrilled about being there, you're not going to be thrilled about being there, and you're going to move on. So that is, to me, the number one thing is your energy, your passion, and are they really getting value? That's something I feel so strongly about. If you're going to spend your time watching me, I want you to feel like you really got some value.
Exactly. Don't use video content as a way to sell a service is also what I will say, right?
Yeah, don't be salesy.
Don't be salesy. Nobody likes that. And people can definitely sniff that out.
And it's just not as effective. I mean, honestly, I'm more effective selling myself by really giving you some content that is helpful. If I really give you 3 nuggets that help you collaborate more effectively with your team, I mean, that's more persuasive than, just hammering you with, my number and my LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn and all that good stuff. I could have that at the very end, but yeah, don't be salesy.
I agree. It's like, for example, because we're a communications agency, if I just straight up said, oh, hire us because we can teach you about public speaking. No. That kind of content, no one's going to pay attention to. But if I shoot video talking about, this is what's worked for me to build speaking confidence, these are the 3 things, let me tell you what they are. People are like, oh, wow. And then they're thinking, who is Jessica? What
Absolutely.
What is it? And then they'll look you up, right? So
I'm a big believer. Don't sell, become a thought leader. You become a thought leader and then people seek you out. Mm-hmm. So just give people great, tangible content and then they will ask you the questions.
And here's the thing, when it comes to thought leadership, it's not just for executives. Anybody can be a thought leader in their space, whether you are just starting out, you're, in the middle of your career, anybody can be a thought leader as long as, whatever it is that you're saying, obviously it's your opinion, right? But it's also educated. You've thought about it, you researched about it, and then you're sharing your interpretation or whatever it is that you think is going to happen with whatever it is that you're talking about. Sure. But the thing with thought leadership that I also find very interesting is I also noticed that, of course, video is a great way to express that thought leadership because, again, that's how people resonate to you. They are like gravitating towards how it is that you're communicating about it. And I've also found that, again, it's not just for executives. Even if you're early on in your career, if you shoot video talking about your industry and trends, employers will see that and they'll be like, oh, wow. Jessica actually has a lot of great thoughts about it, or Dana actually, is quite versed in, really thinking about problems in our industry and even solutions on how to solve it. We want to hire her, right? Sure. So that's definitely one thing that I want to talk about. So one other question I want to bring up that I'm seeing here is for how to start with confidence and face the camera. Should we write a script? It's hard to start. So yes, this goes back to the initial question of, I'm curious about creating content on video, but I just don't know how, or how do I do it? Any tips?
Yeah, I would say dive right in. Like we said, the best, at worst, you can edit it. So dive right in. You can take different takes. In terms of the confidence, I think the confidence comes from picking a topic that you feel really strongly about. Okay. Mm-hmm. So lean into that topic, because when you get really fired up, just like if you were, having a beer with your best friend or a glass of wine, maybe in my case, you get revved up, you're in your zone, you know what you're talking about. That's really where the confidence comes from. And then the technicalities of the camera, that stuff is just kind of ancillary, and you will start to build more confidence with that as you do more of it. I mean, now I'm probably more than a dozen LinkedIn lives in, and certainly it feels differently now than it did at the very beginning. But where my confidence really came from was just my topic. So I think that's, really, really key. And then he asked, should you write a script? The only time I've ever written a script is for my LinkedIn learning courses, because that's a required part of the process, because they need to evaluate scripts. But other than that, I don't write scripts. For me, that goes against the authenticity a little bit. I'm not, it might work for some people, but no, I don't write scripts. If anything, I might outline certain key topics that I might want to hit, or give myself just a general outline. But I don't like to be that prescriptive with it. So no, I wouldn't write out a script.
And that's totally fine. That's your style, right?
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong. I have some answers to this question. Before I answer that, I just want to welcome everybody who's just joining, who just popped in right now. I'm here with Dana Brownlee, and we're talking about the impact of video. We have over 50 people who are on here, and Dana and I are sharing tips on how we use video content on LinkedIn, and how it's a really powerful way to really showcase your knowledge, your abilities, your thought leadership. So we're sharing lots of great tips, and we have a lot of questions coming in too. So again, if anybody has any other questions, please throw it in the chat, because we want to make sure we get to it. So to answer this question though, how do you start with just developing that confidence to do it? I will say, you might not love the first few videos that you shoot. You may not love the way you sound, or the way, your hair looks, or, however it is. But I think the key is, the more you do it though, the more confident you will be, because now you're kind of getting into a flow. Now you're kind of like, oh, okay, I kind of know what to expect now. Trust me, when I think back to the first few videos that I posted on LinkedIn, I was like, oh gosh, like that was kind of cringy, right? But that's okay, right? Because the point is, I'm doing it, I'm testing it out. And then once you start posting it on a consistent basis, you'll see what works. What are people engaging with? And then that is what you want to continuously build on. So confidence just doesn't start and then you do it. It's you do it and then you build confidence. I think
absolutely.
That's
I
really
remember, it reminds me years ago, I think I remember Dr. Phil talking to somebody who was really trying to lose weight, who was like morbidly obese. And she was like, well, I don't really like the gym. He's like, you don't have to like it. You just have to do it. It's like, after a while, you start to lean into that habit. And then eventually your mindset will shift, because it will feel different. You'll be much more confident. But to a certain extent, if you feel that it's important for you in terms of your business model or your social media strategy, I would say just start small. Like she said, just start small, and maybe commit to, shooting 1-2 minute video a week or something. Doesn't mean you have to post it anywhere, but just start doing that. And then eventually, certainly your confidence will shift.
Absolutely. And to the question of, should we write a script? So when I shoot my video content, which again is more on the casual side of, I literally just shoot it with my phone. I don't write a script either, because I try to kind of keep it as conversational as possible. But what I will do is, because I know what I want to talk about, I'll just list out bullet points. Okay, these are the 3 things I definitely want to mention in this video. And then if I, in the middle of recording, and I like suddenly forget, I'll just kind of look down on my paper and be like, oh yeah, point number 2. And then I'll just continuously start talking.
Right.
And I think that flow has worked really well. And the thing with creating video content is, you're also not just staring at your camera as you're shooting. You want to mimic how you would communicate with people in person. So what does that mean? Look around, use your head, so it's like, you want that fluidity. So don't just be stiff, right? And I think, again, that's part of being authentic too. You're having a conversation with people. And that's actually one tip that I learned as a former TV news reporter. One of the things that we were taught when we're broadcasting on television, our bosses used to always say to us, think of it as you're just telling your mom what happened today. That is literally like, treat it as that, not you talking to a camera. Yes, you're talking to a camera, but there's people behind the camera who are going to be watching, and just remember that. So, okay. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk about today, we'll get back to some of the questions, is, do you have any tips, Dana, in terms of setting up your video to shoot the video. So any tips and tricks here of things that you found that have really helped elevate the quality of the video content itself?
Yeah, well, obviously you want to get great equipment. Your ring light, invest in a great ring light, invest in a great microphone, a great webcam. Actually, I wrote an article about this on my Forbes page about 6 months into the pandemic, because there was a run on all this equipment because everybody was going out getting it. So I have the blue microphone, the Blue Yeti. I think those are popular. I'm not sure what you use. I use a Logitech webcam. Think about your space. And so obviously you want to have a space that is consistent with your image, your branding, your content, that's not terribly distracting. So those, I think, are some of the really key elements. You want to think about elevating your, right now, my computer is elevated, so my webcam is elevated, things like that. And so, Jessica, what about you? What are some things that you've used?
Completely agree with you. My philosophy in life is keep things as simple as possible. So anytime I do video content, and even like this live right now, I try to use the least amount of items, technology, because I'm not trying to overcomplicate things for me. So really what I have a small ring light, and that's literally all I have. And I turn it on and when I have to go live, and then I just turn it off. In terms of microphone, I have a MacBook, so I just kind of use what's already in here, and I have found that has worked really well. I mean, I will say, I have been thinking about getting a microphone just like the one that you have, actually, Dana. I've seen a lot of people use it, but for the most part, and this is especially for folks who are starting out, don't overcomplicate things for yourself. Keep it simple. But I will say ring lights makes a huge difference, because you don't want somebody looking at a silhouette of you. They can't see your facial expression. You mentioned one really good point, Dana, which is the positioning. So what you talked about is you elevated your camera, or you elevated your camera. So for me, I'm using a laptop. So what I do is, for example, if I'm doing this, I always just make sure before I jump on a video call, just in general, any video calls, I tilt my my screen so that I'm not just kind of like a floating head either. So I think little like that make a huge difference. I mean, in fact, my number one LinkedIn learning course is how to develop executive presence on video calls. So for those who haven't watched it yet, I'm so grateful. It's been watched over 1 million times.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that LinkedIn learning has been watched over 1 million times, and it's literally called How to Develop Executive Presence on Video Conference Calls. So for those who haven't watched it yet, go to LinkedIn Learning at the end of this chat and then watch that, because I do provide all those tips of how do you present yourself on video so that you are, of course, having that executive presence. And actually, speaking of executive presence, I know this is something that you also talk about as well in terms of how do you carry yourself. Any tips there, Dana?
I think that you said it before in terms of energy. I mean, I've been a trainer, speaker professionally for 18 years now, I think, and that's the number one comment that I get is high energy and practical tips and techniques. You know, don't think about it from your perspective. Think about the value you're creating from their perspective. What is the pain point? And how are you fulfilling that? But in terms of, it's using your hands, it's leaning in, but it's leaning in literally and figuratively. I mean, there are times when literally I'll kind of lean in, but I mean, figuratively, just having some energy and passion. Because think about it, when people are sitting, you know, at their homes and they've got dogs and food and all these other distractions, it takes 3 times as much energy to really get their attention, to really reel them in, because there's so many distractions going on. So I think really having that energy high in an authentic way, not in a crazy way. Okay, not in a crazy way. Okay, yeah, don't start acting crazy, but in an authentic way where people can feel like, oh yes, like she really cared about this and she really had something to say. So I think that's just absolutely what's most important.
You touched on a point that every good public speaker knows: speak with energy. And if people can just know to implement that, even honestly, even in their meetings, right? When you are talking, speak with energy, not just kind of this
Right.
monotone voice, oh, trust me, you will be able to capture people's attention. And arguably, I would say on video too, it's even more important to showcase that energy, that enthusiasm, because there's a barrier, right? We're not in the same room
Yeah.
and
It's harder.
it's harder, right? So even though you may feel, oh, I'm so animated, it doesn't necessarily translate.
Yeah. You need to do about twice as much as you think you need to do.
Exactly. That's the golden nugget, really, that people don't think about. It's like, oh, that seems strange. Like, I'm not normally like that. But I will say, when it comes to communications, public speaking, engagement, people gravitate towards people who have that energy versus just this, like, okay, this is what I want to talk about today. And just look at how bland my face is, right? And
Yeah.
that's just not interesting. So,
Absolutely. Remember, they feed off you. So
yeah.
you're the source. So you start really strong.
So I want to pull up one other question that I just saw here that was really good. Let's see. It was a question about actually what not to do. Actually, I can't find the question anymore, but I'm just going to ask it because I was reading it
I saw
earlier.
that one as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. What are some don't do's when it comes to video?
Well, I think you just said a great one is don't be monotone, don't be robotic. And even though we say that and it seems obvious, there's a lot of bad video out there. I mean, it's people are just robotic. Or also don't read. If you have a PowerPoint slide up, don't read. Everybody can read it, okay? So you give them a couple of highlights or you tell a story or give them an example, bring it to life. If you're just going to read the PowerPoint deck, then why don't you just email them the deck? I mean, what is the point of your even being there? So do not read, do not be robotic. For every slide, I always think about, so what? I try to answer the question, so what? They can read the slide. I need to tell them the so what, like what's in it for them, or why should they care? So I always try to think with the viewer in mind. And so absolutely don't be robotic. Don't read to them are two that jump out at me immediately. And also, I think with this video stuff, this is kind of a bigger point. There's so many moving parts to this. Figure out which pieces to outsource and which ones to do yourself. I mean, there's some people who do everything themselves, soup to nuts. There's some people, like there was a question before about the animated whiteboard videos. For me, I outsourced part of that. So I would write the script. I would do the voiceover. Obviously, I'm doing all the content, but I outsourced with a freelance artist to actually create the graphic piece of it because that's not my thing. I wanted it to look super professional and look great. So think about which pieces you need to own and which pieces you're okay outsourcing or would be better off if you outsourced.
As a great tip. And I think, yeah, maybe early on, maybe your first two videos, it would be too difficult to outsource because you're also trying to get the hang of it and you're trying to figure out your style. So again, don't worry about that maybe early on if you're just still trying to build that confidence to build engaging video content. But I will say outsourcing is a great way to alleviate a lot of that stress of like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. And there's a lot of like, websites out there where people are expert video editors and it's very affordable for them to just kind of like snip it and cut these videos that you have. My tip on kind of do not on videos is, when we mentioned it earlier, don't get on video to sell anything.
Yeah,
right?
Don't be salesy.
Don't sell your service or your company or whatever. Just talk about, what is it that and don't be like cheap about it. Like, tell me what be generous with your knowledge, and people are like, they'll gravitate towards that. Trust me. You'll get your ROI, whatever, in the end. But in the beginning, just give me all the content, all your knowledge, and don't feel like it's going to be taking anything away from you. Okay. So that's kind of like one of the things that I will say, like, don't be cheap about your content. The second thing I will say is, don't put too much pressure on yourself either, honestly. And I think that's kind of like, and for me, I'm a perfectionist in that way where I'm like, oh man, do I want to do this? It's not perfect, but you really kind of have to get over that, especially because the great thing about video is, you see a lot of good videos, a lot of bad videos. Chances are you'll probably land somewhere in the middle anyways. So I think it's okay. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Just do it. And I really feel you would be kind of surprised at how people gravitate and resonate towards it. As long as you implement some of those things that we talked about, right? When you're speaking, provide lots of value, do it with energy, don't read, right?
Yeah, and I'll just to piggyback on that, I will say that's part of the benefit of LinkedIn Live. So those of you who haven't done a LinkedIn Live, you haven't tried it, go ahead and dip your toe in the water, because for me, that has saved me. I have that perfectionism, or I have that tendency as well. And sometimes when you have the ability to edit, it can become a curse, because then you do 85 million takes and you're editing forever, versus when you do it live and you just go out there and, be your best self, and you're authentic and you're passionate. It may not be perfect, but usually it's so much better than you thought it was. And there's no redo. It's out there. It's done. So that is the benefit once you do have some level of confidence, is you don't spend hours and hours and hours ruminating on it, trying to make it perfect. That saying, oftentimes perfection is the enemy of good enough. And so live kind of forces you to just go with the good enough and move on.
That's a really good point. And it just kind of makes me think that sometimes people are like, oh, I stumbled on a word. Oh, I have to redo the whole thing again.
Exactly.
No,
and then you do 15 takes.
Yeah. I used to be that way too. And I stumbled upon a word, but I'm like, you know what? This is a conversation I'm having with somebody. And if I stumble over a word, I'm just going to keep going anyways, right?
You're human, right?
Just keep going, right? Don't stress yourself out. Okay, so we've been chatting for over 50 minutes now, Dana. It just flew. I mean, I had so much fun. Again, I want to thank everybody who joined. Do you have any last minute tips, Dana, that you want our audience to walk away with? And of course, where they can find you too.
Yeah, I would say prioritize content over production value. Again, this is not Oprah. None of us are like Oprah, Dr. Phil, Kardashians. It's not going to have that level of production value. Just really focus on your content and giving them something that's really valuable. I would also say, once you do decide to jump into the LinkedIn Live pool and start doing those, they're awesome, amazing, but don't overcommit. I think that a lot of that is about building community. And so it's helpful to have a predictable cadence. If you want to do once a month or twice a month or weekly, think about not over committing. Commit to something that that you can maintain for a longer period of time if you are trying to build a bit of a following and a community, which I think is awesome. But most of all, just do it. Just absolutely do it. Don't talk yourself out of it. You've got something amazing to say, I'm sure. Lean into those topics that you're most passionate about, and just offer to the world what you have to offer.
I would echo everything that you said in terms of kind of fine closing words and tips. Like I said, I think one of the silver linings to a lot of us working in this hybrid world is maybe we got a little used to communicating on video. So kind of think about, you've already taken a step there versus if you had never done video calls before. So
absolutely,
it's not too different. So think that, okay, you've already got some practice in. But ultimately, if you're on this right now, perhaps you're thinking about, maybe I want to explore creating a little bit more video content. And I think Dana and I will both loudly say, do it, right?
Yes.
You have to start and try. And I really think, again, creating video content is great for thought leadership. And thought leadership is not just for executives. Thought leadership are for people who can still be in college. It's just, as long as whatever it is you're saying is of value, people gravitate towards it. You would be surprised. And that is what elevates you in your career, because then people want to work with you now.
Absolutely.
Any other tips that I want to share? Again, just start. It doesn't have to be perfect. The beauty of, I think, what I'm really happy to see that what LinkedIn is doing is I do feel they are promoting videos more than ever before. They like the idea of people creating video content because I do think that they see the value in it, because of course, this is just so much more engaging than just reading like a post, right? But of course, I do think you need both. But in terms of kind of like any other last minute advice, when you're communicating on video, high energy, making sure that, the way your positions looks good. Lighting is huge. You don't want like a bright light right behind you. So just these little things make a difference. So Dana. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add one last thing. There's so much value and power with video. Once you take the time to create a video, utilize, leverage, and repurpose that product. Don't think about it just for one thing. It can be a social media post. It can be part of your newsletter. It can be something that you put in your proposals to clients. It can show up on your website. So you might have one video, but you can repurpose it many different ways. So leverage it.
Like, isn't that the best? It's like the gift that keeps on giving, right?
Yes,
It's like you create
absolutely.
one. Okay, Dana, where can people find you?
I am on my website is professionalismmatters.com, but the best way to keep in touch is just to follow me on LinkedIn or follow me on my Forbes careers page. And so if you really want to hear what I think about a range of careers topics, you want to check me out on Forbes careers at Dana Brownlee.
Well, Dana, thank you so much for your time. And again, my name is Jessica Chen, and you can also find me here on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the platform I'm most active on. And you can check out our website, which is soulcastmedia.com. And as you guys have probably heard me say, we are a communications agency. So we teach people how do you communicate well, whether it's in person or on camera. But again, if you don't follow me or Dana yet, be sure to, I think there's a way to find us on this platform that you're watching us through right now. Be sure to follow us. If you have any questions for us, feel free to message us. We'll be happy to get back to you. But again, we want to thank you for spending the last nearly an hour with us talking about video. Hopefully everybody was able to walk away with some good tips. So
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dana.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you guys soon.
Bye.